So I decided to do this review from here. I didn't set up the core space as of yet. There's still some stuff coming in to properly make that a review space. Plus, because I've moved into this new room, I'm a college student, and you don't know how the neighbors are to me talking loudly into a camera several times a week about stuff. But I did just see Iron Fist season 2. I finally finished watching it today and thought I'd get you this review out as fast as possible, and I'd tell you what I thought of this particular season. This is, of course, taking place right after the first season ended, but it's also taking place after the Defenders ended, and you see Danny Rand in a spot where he's now the Iron Fist, doing more Iron Fist stuff than he was in season 1. He's with Colleen Wing, Jessica Henwick, and they're trying to stop whatever threats they can between a gang war erupting in Chinatown. In the middle of all this, Davos, his friend from season 1, if you remember, is kind of going onto this bad road, a bad side, so to speak, and he's also coming after Danny in some way. That's all I'm gonna give you because I want to keep this as non-spoiler as possible. I don't want to give too much away considering most people may have not seen the season yet. I'm pretty sure a lot of people didn't even know this season was dropping today. It's kind of discreet in many ways. There's just so much else going on right now that me talking about Iron Fist season 2 almost feels like, what the hell? Spider-Man's out on PlayStation 4 today. So, just to give you a sense of that. Now, the first Iron Fist is probably the weakest Marvel Netflix season so far. That was a season that had a lot of issues. It was very mediocre. It was alright. When it first came out, I gave it a pretty decent grade. I gave it like a B. That's something I would probably reduce to a C plus now, just to be very honest. That way, I can make this particular season's grade a little more justifiable because this is pretty much in every single aspect a gigantic improvement on season 1. This is a much better film, this is a much better acted, much better written especially, and much better choreographed season than that first season. This one is also better paced, it's got a better story to it, it's got a better interest level, it doesn't waver so much as that first season did, but really the biggest changes that really help this season are its action sequences, which are amazing. They're more on par with what we've seen in Daredevil, Luke Cage, and even Jessica Jones for that matter. It's really getting to that level, which I'm very happy about because that's something season 1 really lacked. In defense, Finn Jones only had 2 weeks to train for season 1's action sequences. Here, he's obviously gotten a lot more time, what with the Defenders and his appearance in Luke Cage season 2 included. So he's definitely doing a lot better here in the action sequences, but he's also a much better Danny Rand here. He's a much better character. He's more suited to playing the character now than he was when he first started out, so I have to give him credit to that too. He's really drastically improved as this particular character, and Danny Rand is more close to the comics now than he was before, which is a fantastic thing. This also has to do with the fact that the showrunner has changed. Season 1 had Scott Buck, who was also doing Inhumans, and that also was really, really bad. So Marvel Television probably just thought, probably not a good idea to have this guy running the shows, and so they completely removed him, and now we have someone else doing the running, and it's much better. It's much better done that way. One of the things that I really liked in this season, which I want to talk about and briefly, is also the score. It's a much better musical score. That's something I really liked in season 1, actually. I really liked the music, but here it's done a lot better. There's a nice cinematic tone to it throughout. I really liked it. I forget who the composer for this one is, but it's a really good score. Colleen Wing is also really well done in this particular season. She has a lot of time spent with Misty Knight in this season. She's there for a chunk of it, and they get along very well. The character chemistry is much better in this season as compared to the previous season. You get more with the Meachams. Ward Meacham has a lot to do in this particular season as well. He's also really good. Joy Meacham was on this tethers between the bad and the good at the end of season 1. She's still writing that in season 2, and I found her storyline to also be very compelling. Davos, the main villain of the season, is definitely the most compelling in many ways because, of course, he is the villain, but there is motivation to why he wants to, take on Danny, and a better sense of why he hates Danny Rand at the moment. It's not the strongest motivation. Could have been a little better at points, but it's much more clearly mapped out than you're not coming back home in season 1, which we have the ramifications of that at the end of that season, and he is continuing to face the ramifications of that in the beginning of season 2. Also, one thing like I said, is much better is the writing. It's much nicer. It's much more entertaining. It's got a very nice pace to it. It's very tightly written. There are a few points where a few subplots are brought up, and they kind of tend to grind the storytelling to a halt sometimes, but it doesn't do it on a scale as much as that first season. That first season really that was really bogged down by the side plots, and I think this one definitely does not do that as much as that first season did. That one was one of the biggest issues for season 1, in my opinion. First episode in particular is one of my favorites. It just starts off with a bang and it just keeps going from that point on. It does have that episode in the middle, like every Marvel Netflix season does, where you're just kind of going through the motions, waiting for the next big thing to happen. That definitely happens. Every season of almost every TV show ever made has that moment where things just stop before the big explosion happens again. But to its credit, for all the flaws that this particular season has in those aspects, it does improve on that as the finale approaches, which I have to say is really great. Once you get to the last 2 episodes, those are pretty spectacular episodes, and it ends on a pretty great note. It's exactly the way it should be. I think it's done a better job of not trying to, break away from the original character and what the original character represents. One of the biggest issues of season 1 was you just weren't into Danny Rand 100%. You were always detached from this guy, and he was being this really whiny and unlikable personality. Here he is much more likable. He's much more entertaining. I also have to talk about Alice Eve as Typhoid Mary, as she will be known as later. She was also a very compelling character, and a lot of the plot focused on her and her story and her past. And I thought that was one of the, again, most compelling aspects of the entire season. As usual, there are a lot of references brought up here and there to other things, and one big reference is brought up by her when she's telling her story, which I'm not going to spoil. I'm going to wait for you to find out for yourself. It's actually a pretty cool reference. It's something that every time she mentioned it, I was like, yes, I know what you're talking about. It's a very exciting Marvel thing. This doesn't have references to the Avengers at all, which I think is good, because I think we've kind of gotten past the point where we know this takes place in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We don't need to be told over and over again that, hey, did you see the big green guy? Or did you see the guy with the hammer? Or the guy with the shield? It's like, we know. We know for a fact that this is in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It doesn't need to be referenced over and over again. That way, that one little thing I was talking about with Mary, that kind of clarifies things as a whole. There are references to things that happen in the Defenders as well, and once again, this does a good job of bringing up things that happen in the Defenders that have had an impact on the characters. Again, that is one of the things, like I said, I had an issue with in Jessica Jones Season 2 and Luke Cage Season 2 and now Iron Fist Season 2. Both of them have made up for that in a lot of ways, and that's something that's really, really great. I'm interested in where they're going to go with this, because if you've seen Infinity War, you kind of know where the Marvel Universe is at this point. So I'm curious if at any point in time in the Netflix shows they're ever going to make that thing happen that happens in Infinity War, which I'm not going to spoil just in case nobody's seen it yet. I wonder if that's ever going to coincide with each other. I feel like it has to at this point. Somewhere along the way, you just have to make them clash into one another. So yes, aside from a few problems in its pacing here and there, some of the writing sometimes gets a little too much in terms of the subplots. There's this one subplot with Ward and this therapy group he's going to, which sometimes doesn't quite mesh too well. But every now and then, those few flaws, they do come up, and it could have been a better season in that regard, but it is still such a strong season for this, and it's still a much stronger season than it was in the first than from the first season. This is actually, for me, like what Revenge of the Sith was to Attack of the Clones. It's almost in every single aspect better than its predecessor, and that is a huge accomplishment in itself. I'm gonna give Iron Fist Season 2 a B+. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Look forward to more reviews very soon. I have seen a few other movies. I'll get those reviews out as soon as possible. There's my fan going on in the background. That's probably what you can hear. As always, if you like this, please do subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the movies.